Okay, my name is Selena Middleton. I'm publisher and editor-in-chief at Stelliform Press, a small press focused on climate fiction and environmental stories. Before we begin, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement for both publisher and author. If we're to work toward a reform of Western culture's relationship to the environment, this demands that settlers acknowledge that they are uninvited guests on the land who must shape their behavior with that knowledge. We must acknowledge the people who have been in relationship with the lands for thousands of years and then go beyond mere acknowledgement. So Cynthia Zhang is a settler living on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples who were forcibly removed from their homelands. We acknowledge the generations that have gone before, as well as the present day Gabrielino Tongva people. Even though the Tongva people were removed from their lands and denied official tribal status until 1994, exciting reclamations are happening today in the realm of language. About this language reclamation project, Brent Scarcliffe is saying that learning the language has helped him to look at California with a more mystical sense of attachment. It is not just a place I happen to be in, but a place full of power and meaning. So as readers and writers, we understand the power of language. And as part of taking this acknowledgement from a symbolic gesture into the realm of action, I encourage you to seek out and support Indigenous language learning programs in your area. And I am also a settler and live and run Stelliform Press on the traditional territory shared between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Anishinaabe Nations, which was acknowledged in the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Agreement. The wampum uses the symbols of a dish to represent the territory and one spoon to represent that the people are to share the resources of the land and only take what they need. So this image represents an ethic that we need now and in the future. So the novel we're celebrating today is one that takes up big and challenging ideas in a quiet way with deep tenderness and commitment to care. It's about alienation and belonging and finding the energy to support and respond to a troubled world. These are questions artists are increasingly engaging with, and we're lucky to have some of them here to help as we launch After the Dragons. Our first two guests are friends and colleagues of our featured author, so I will introduce her first, and she'll take over the first part of the program. So I'm very pleased to introduce Cynthia Zhang. Cynthia is the author of After the Dragons and a PhD student in comparative studies and literature and culture at the University of Southern California. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Kaleidotrope, On Spec, Phantom Drift, and other venues. She is a 2021 DV debut mentee. And Cynthia, I will pass the digital stage to you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming out tonight and for supporting the book overall. I hope you enjoy it if you have a opportunity to read it. So our first guest is Elinam Agbo. Elinam was born in Ghana and grew up in Kansas. She holds a BA from the University of Chicago and an MFA from the Helen Zell Writers Program at the University of Michigan. A graduate of the Clarion Writers Workshop, she has received support from Aspen Words, the Clarion Foundation, and the Hurston Wright Foundation, among others. Her work has appeared in the Bear Life Review, American Short Fiction, Waxwing, PEN America Debut Short Stories 2018, and elsewhere. She is currently the Kenyon Review Fellow in Prose, and she will be sharing some poetry with us today. So off to you, Elinam.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Selena. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is exciting, and I'm glad we're all here to celebrate After the Dragons, which is a marvelous book. I'll be reading a poem that I will now share with you in just a minute with the screen. All right, so you should be able to read along as I go. Here it is. Is everyone good? Okay. All right. So yeah, I'll just go ahead. I can give a brief background about this. This is a poem that's like sort of about nostalgia, but also about dedicated to my hometown where there was a lot of flooding when I was young, and there's still a lot of flooding. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. And yeah, thank you. All right. On your way to SS Wajo, light the kerosene lamp, carry the green-eyed cat, make a bridge of coconut logs, cross the stream, Akara's forgotten child, catch shrimp, avoid tadpoles, let the adults carry our lives on their heads. You hold the light. Don't forget the mortar. Cement bags are heavier than blocks. Ask the army of ants, how did I get baby powder in my eyes? Unlike electricians, masons can be kind. Before climbing onto dusty shoulders, wash your feet. Smoke tilapia, butter bread after burning. Are you allergic to catfish? Admire their whiskers. One shoulder deep in a crab's home, don't brag. Watch your fingers. In the picture, my father looked thirsty, so I soaked his face in water. Sharpened machete on oblong stone. My mother cut the head off pythons. Once, a cobra, a baby, an accident. She killed mid-swing. The grass overgrown, breeding Anopheles mosquitoes. Don't forget the birds. Crows, their matte black choir robes, striped white across the chest. Vulture and tabby locked in a staring contest. Buzz off. This is my space. Careful, this fight could be your last. If possible, carry a mental picture. Brother carpenter, brother mason, brother from Togo who loved graveyards and peace, who stuffed a machete wound closed with pepper. Aunt who ruined Saturday plans, whose okra stew lives forever. Losing teeth in dreams is a sign of stress, unfinished business. A Bible under the pillow is some protection. No need to call the fairy. Enjoy the music of milk teeth crash landing on aluminum sheets. Don't forget the bucket of mangoes. Here, a fly swatter, rag or woven fan. Too many talons on the roof. Rain carry on their extended family. Scared of witch hunts disgrace your dead. Scared to throw my teeth away. Be careful of the cat killer, his house of mines. Admire men named after countries and laughter. Admire sparingly. Unlike uncle who sucks paracetamol like candy, not blood. Uncles who cross River Volta, part blood. Don't forget the games. Turn the Ludo board over for snakes and ladders. Race you through the sugarcane field. First to win loses. Race you to the coconut tree. Don't leave underwear on the fence. Bottle nuts for the coming flood. Memorize this album before departure. If possible, keep away from waterlogged planets. Thank you. All right, we'll stop share now. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Elinam, for that poem. I really loved it, and all of the very small details inside of it. I feel like I could say a lot of things, but that would, anyway, it vaguely reminds me of a Ken Liu short story where all of Japan has to be abandoned, save for like one or two children who go into space, and how we carry the past on our backs. But for my question, there's like a lot of very specific, realistic detail, things that you kind of see in the everyday, medication, etc. And I think it's only towards the very end that we realize it's like, oh, it's a spaceship possibly. And I'm wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about kind of that mix of sort of realism and speculative elements.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I can first talk about kind of how it started. So it started from a prompt. One of my professors was doing this exercise, sort of writing a poem a day in April. I think it was 2019. No, it was either 2019 or 2020. We kept losing track of time.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So we were doing a prompt, and one of the this was like one of the prompts, which was it was quite long and complicated, but the essence of it was to sort of place, like, write sort of as many sort of details of a specific place from childhood, and then place those details some way in a spaceship. And well, yeah, like it was, yeah, like it was sort of like, yeah, like the title kind of came from that idea of like, yeah. So I think sort of the poem and sort of the structure of the poem and the sort of placing of the speculative as like a vessel, right? Like making the speculative part the vessel and letting the content be the memories was very much connected to kind of how I received the prompt. But yeah, like I obviously didn't know that I would only reveal it at the end. I think the sort of juxtaposition of realism and the speculative is always really interesting to me, because I feel like what we call realism to me is also kind of subjective. I think everyone has a very subjective experience, and someone's realism could be your speculative. So yeah, so that's something that I try to keep in mind too while writing it.
Yeah, especially with like magical realism and colonialism, etc.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I don't know how much time I have allocated to just chat, so I will just go on with saying that was an incredible poem, and we are going on to our next guest, who is Misha Grifka. Misha Grifka Wander is a Midwestern artist and writer currently pursuing a PhD at Ohio State University. Their work focuses on queer experience, speculative futures, and the environment, themes they explore through comics, poetry, and prose. Previous creative publications can be found in 614, Now, and Apricity magazine. Misha lives in Columbus, Ohio, with their partner and two very soft cats. So I will turn it over to Misha, and maybe the cats if they invade.
They've just eaten, so they've fled to who knows. Hi, before I read the poems, I just want to take a moment to do a very brief land acknowledgement as well. As Central Ohio is a meeting point of a lot of different tribes, and so this work was written on the unceded, ancestral, and contemporary territory of the Shawnee, Potawatomi, Delaware, Miami, Peoria, Seneca, Wyandot, Ojibwe, and Cherokee people. And I will share my screen. I have two shorter poems. So this first one is called Drip. Rain drips from the eaves onto our bed. I make trips back and forth up the stairs into the dark wooden interior that we own none of. Constantly, there is the drip onto the back of my skull as I am running. Soon, I say, we will move. Everyone I ask is not responsive. I am calling the authorities. I am calling my friends. Help, I say, there is rain in our room. There is no roof over us. We are closed on Sundays, they say. So sorry we cannot help until a bank holiday. Even when I am not under the roof, I can hear it. I feel it dripping onto you, and I want to run home, snatch you away, block up the holes, call the landlord. I know you can do these things yourself. I know that neither of us will change them. My love, I wanted more for you than this rain, more than this endless dripping from holes that should not exist, more than supplicating people with hands but no ears. When I hold you, I will tell you about the things I wanted for you. When you hold me, you will show me the ways to get them. And secondly, this poem is called We Expect Sweet Things to Come from the Ground. Sitting by the train tracks. Not a lot going on these days, huh? No, not too much. You know, I can hear this train every night that it runs anyway. My window open to catch the freedom-scented night breeze. Every night like that, I can hear the train whistle wicked right into my room. Did it keep you up? No, I'm a heavy sleeper. Licking the sap from the tree, expecting it to taste like syrup, even though I know it has to be boiled many times over. Sometimes we expect sweet things to come from the ground. Like I never grew up on a farm, but the scent of hay is good to me. Like I did not need to know about other people's lips to want the touch of yours. Inside your veins, knowledge can open up, dilate, prevent heart attacks. I fall asleep to the sound of tornado sirens. Internet is out. When I wake up and smell rain through the window, my heart shifts 2 inches to the side. They should make pillows more like you. They should make people more like you.
Yeah, thank you for those. Those were really tender, sweet poems. And I feel, especially with all of our global disasters and the world, many landlords failing to provide for us, incredibly relatable, but hopeful in, you know, the sustaining power of like care, etc. So yeah, I think maybe something I wanted to ask is like, these are very, yeah, like again, these are very emotional, personal poems. And I think sometimes a lot of the discourse about climate change is large and apocalyptic and full of despair. So I guess like maybe going like, what do you think is the point of flowers, of sweet things, of like soft poems and books in a time of climate crisis?
Yeah, I think that actually they're incredibly important because as you said, the climate crisis induces a lot of sort of apocalyptic despair. And I think that when just faced with the potential loss and also all of the overwhelming data, it's a very human reaction to just sort of shut down and say like, well, I guess everything is doomed. I'm going to crawl into a hole until the world explodes. But that does prevent us stopping things from getting worse. It does mean that we're completely unable to do anything. And so I think that reminding people of the soft things, of things that we want to protect, of things that continue to be good is really important. And just using those, using emotional content, whether it's through fiction or other media or just conversations to process our feelings about climate change is a necessary and human part of gearing up to actually do something about it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of despair, but if you look for it, there are like small bits of hope. If anyone follows Jeff Vandermeer on Twitter, he talks a lot about rewilding his yard, and I don't have the money to buy a yard in any way. But like there is the possibility for transformative work. So do you have anything, I don't know, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of very small things, or it feels small, like a yard in comparison to all of the giant news items. And that's one of the things that like poetry and writing are good for, is focusing on those small things and expanding them.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for sharing those really lovely poems. So I think I'm going to go back to Selena to introduce our last guest.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you, Elinam and Misha. Those were just fabulous poems, very touching my heart. I don't know if I can take it. Okay. So right now, we're going to take a short musical break with the quite frankly hilarious Kari Maaren. Kari writes and performs geeky ukulele music about Batman, genre literature, and various types of monsters. And she's produced two CDs, Beowulf Pulled My Arm Off, and Everybody Hates Elves. She has posted more music on her YouTube channel. Her first novel, the Nebula and Sunburst nominated and Copper Cylinder winning YA fantasy adventure Weave a Circle Round, was published by Tor in 2017. She has a completed webcomic, West of Bathurst, and an active one, It Never Rains. She has won Aurora Awards for her music in 2013 and 2015, and for her comics in 2015 and 2019. Whenever you're ready, Kari, thank you.
Thank you. I am in charge of the silly part of the evening. Selena asked me to do a couple of songs, and she gave me some themes, and I sent her some potential, and she chose these two. So anything that happens next is actually her fault. This first one is Selena, your mic is on and you're typing very loudly. Okay, sorry about that. I was distracted by the typing. So this first one is a song that Selena I haven't had a chance to read the novel yet, unfortunately, but Selena tells me that this song is similar to the novel in that it's pushing back against a particular trope. So here we go. Sorry, there. Come in, my child, I see you're wondering about all the things that have been happening to you. The prophecy, the omens, the birthmark and the portents, what was promised is at last coming true. That weapon in the corner was left here by your father. Oh yes, you had a father, he went bad. Your years of being no one have led you to this moment. Forget your life before this, you are done with being sad. You are the chosen one, you thought that you were just some dorky orphan kid. Surprise! And now you must charge into battle with your brand new flag unfurled. You are the chosen one, well go on, save the world. I am the wise old hermit who dwells upon this hill, expressly to tell you about your fate. What's that? Yes, I'm aware your foster parents both abused you, but my job has always been to wait. Adversity is an essential part of being special. If you weren't neglected and alone, you would be lacking the skill set that would let you defeat the looming world-destroying danger on your own. You are the chosen one. You thought that you were just some dorky orphan kid. Surprise! And now you must charge into battle with your brand new flag unfurled. You are the chosen one. Well, go on, save the world. Your destiny's already laid out for you. Forget any plans you may have made. The people that you save will all adore you. I don't know why you act like you're afraid. It will all come right cause it is meant to. There's no real reason that you should prepare. Everybody knows that you've been sent to save us all, so why are you complaining? It's unfair. Take these oblique constructions and random artifacts, which will come in useful in time. Head right up that mountain without the right equipment. I've heard it is a terrifying climb. Lucky you, there is no possibility of failure. Well, yes, I am aware you might be lacking strength, experience, emotional stability, intelligence, and knowledge, but you'll win because it's right. You are the chosen one. You thought that you were just some dorky orphan kid. Surprise! And now you must charge into battle with your brand new flag unfurled. You are the chosen one. Well, go on, save the world. You are the chosen one. You thought that you were just some dorky orphan kid. Surprise! Now you must charge into battle with your brand new flag unfurled. You are the chosen one. Well, go on, save the world. You are the chosen one. You thought that you were just some dorky orphan kid. Surprise! And now you must charge into battle with your brand new flag unfurled. You are the chosen one. Well, go on, save the world. You are the chosen one. Well, go on, save the world. Hooray! Okay, so that was that one was called Chosen One. I'm pretty sure you can probably tell that from the number of times I said that. So this next one is a little harder to explain because again, Selena sent me these themes, and I didn't have songs for all the themes, and for one of them was kindness to animals, and so I didn't have a kindness to animals song. Not that I don't like being kind, I do like being kind to animals, but I just haven't written a song about it. So I sent this one as a joke, and she picked it. I think because I sent it as a joke. So just be aware that I apologize ahead of time. I apologize ahead of time for what's about to happen. All right. Sorry, I'm missing part of my screen that I need. There we are. In days of old, people told stories of those who got caught in the snare of the wood. They strayed from the path and their families knew that they had vanished for good. For we lurked in the trees and we stalked them as we howled our names through the night. We were monsters and everyone feared our sharp claws and our foul transformative bite. But that's all pretty old-fashioned. Those traditions were not going to last. I'm happy to say we've evolved over time and rejected the primitive past. Please stop calling us monsters. That label is not really fair. The werewolves have come to the 21st century, wind in our copious hair. I'm your sexy werewolf. I should fill you with joy. For I'm primal terror and visceral fear in the form of a really cute boy. You shudder whenever you see me, though let's call that shudder a thrill. I really like you, so we should go out, and I probably won't even kill you. I have other people to kill. I remember I used to like hunting down men by the brilliant light of the full moon. Now I am learning to flex my bare abs as I speak of my longing to spoon. And sometimes I'm noble and tortured, and sometimes I'm jealous and cruel. But always I'm half naked and smoking hot, plus inexplicably cool. I'm your sexy werewolf. Hear me snarl in the dark. Then I'll turn in slow motion while pouting a bit and make out with you in the park. I am raw terror and hunger. I live to hunt and pursue. So let's get a burger and talk about us, and I'll buy a milkshake for you, a nice chocolate milkshake for you. The humans seem ready for werewolves. They like the fact that we're not tame. If only the vampires weren't horning in and making a mess of the game. They think that because they're all tragic, the ladies will think they're all that. Well, listen up, Vlad, I'm a freaking huge wolf, and you can turn into a bat. I'm your sexy werewolf. I'll just lie here and pant. And maybe I'll curl up and lick my own butt, as a vampire can't. You say, but he's immortal, and I'm just a bit hurt. But forget all that, join me and run with the wolves, and I promise I'll take off my shirt for you. I'm happy to take off my shirt. I'm your sexy werewolf. I could make you one too. We'd sprout hair in anguish and live a cursed life, but we'd do it together, so woo! We'd know our own bodies as torture and long for a pain to be done. Then tear off our clothes in the fluttering moonlight and do drama for fun. Again, we do teenage drama for fun. Again, we do teenage drama for fun. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the lunch.
Thank you so much, Kari. I mean, I think that was appropriate. And yeah, you know, Kai's a little bit snarly in the book sometimes. So there's a bit of crossover.
Here you go.
All right. So now we've come to our main event, and I will welcome back to the stage the author of the hour, Cynthia Zhang. We will have a short reading now and then a Q&A period. And Cynthia, of course, will be reading from After the Dragons. In After the Dragons Overheated Beijing, researcher Elijah Ahmed and activist Zhang Kaifei join forces to save the city's beleaguered dragons and find a cure for Kai's illness. Grief hangs over their relationship, and Eli and Kai must confront hard truths if there is any hope for them or the dragons. Over to you, Cynthia. I'll let you introduce the two parts that you're going to read.
Yeah, hi all again. So this first section I'm going to be reading is from Eli and Kai's first meeting. They meet outside Mr. Lin's shop, who is Kai's boss, because you know you should try to do things besides work. So Eli watches as Kaifei walks behind the register, opening the cabinet and rummaging through its contents with familiarity. So, Kaifei says, not looking up from where he's kneeling, a collection of nets and dried jerky scattered around him. You're from Bedards? Yes, he says, blinking. There's a hint of Britishness in Kai's accent, a not uncommon trait in the English spoken by international students. Only here for the summer, though. Research assistant, he says, switching to Mandarin. Veterinary medicine? Just normal medicine. Dr. Wong dragged me out here. I don't know either, he says when Kai raises one eyebrow. She's got these ideas about dragons, thinks that because of the way their immune and respiratory systems work, there could be a connection to human disease. They could be a model organism. This last word Eli knows only from hours spent poring over lab manuals, Chinese English dictionary in hand. I think she feels responsible for me, actually, he says, smiling ruefully. It's interesting, though. Not a lot of people have dragons in America, so I don't know a lot about them. Import taxes, international laws, etc. Kaifei pushes the cabinet closed and stands up. They're also high-strung, finicky bastards. If the Western species were half as entitled, you could understand why the Europeans were in such a rush to get rid of them. Net and bag of food in hand, Kaifei moves towards the back of the store and a row of tanks against the wall. Eli follows, staying a step behind as Kaifei adjusts the dials on a tank, flips a switch on another, pops open the top of another and skims dead leaves off the water. The dragon inside, a pale, violently red-eyed sui long, a river or lake variant, Eli guesses by the delicate tracery of veins beneath skin, pokes its head out of the water. A feathery blue mane trails down its spine, and in place of wings, the sui long has fine fin-like membranes along its legs to help it navigate through the water. While all sui long spend a large portion of their lives in water, this dragon looks like it must be a fully aquatic breed, able to breathe above water but receiving most of its oxygen from the long, frilled external gills framing its head. Sensing human attention, the dragon makes a high, warbling sound, clearly expectant. Kaifei rolls his eyes but acquiesces, sprinkling a handful of pork floss into the tank. It disappears in a matter of seconds, the dragon spraying out the extra water it swallowed. Here, he says, shaking a few pieces of dried fish onto Eli's palm and pointing to a small cage near the ground. You can give this to Suxing. He's not an asshole like some of the others, but be careful where you put your fingers. Eli blinks. Thank you, he says, and then leans down, imitating Kai's pose, holding his hand with the food just outside the cage. The dragon's tongue is slightly rough against his skin, but not unpleasant. Are you a student too, then? No, not like that. Kai-Fei says, clicking his tongue as Eli reaches out a hand to pet Su-Xing. You don't want to approach them from above. It makes them nervous. Larger dragons sometimes eat the smaller ones, so it's a prey instinct. Like this, he says, extending one hand in front of the dragon, palm up. Let them smell your hand first. Then, when he's comfortable, go slow and make sure he can see you when you pet him. Eli watches and then tries as best he can to mimic Kai-Fei's movements. Is this right? Well, Kai-Fei says, watching as Su-Xing leans into his touch, he hasn't bitten you yet. I promise not to hold it against you if he does. That earns a smile from Kai-Fei, a small one, but nonetheless, it's striking how it transforms his face. It's oddly calming, sitting there watching as Su-Xing rubs against his hand. Eli scratches the soft scales underneath Su-Xing's chin, and the dragon arches its back in response, wings lazily folding and unfolding in pleasure. Outside, it's getting darker. Small groups of people gather, men in sweat-soaked undershirts lighting cigarettes as they idle in the shade storefronts. Shoes shuffle, motorcycles groan, headlights fade. Someone calls out a name, the sound almost comically loud in the silence. The over-enthusiastic response, an easy embrace by men who would never think to question their heterosexuality. Kai-Fei glances towards the doorway and sighs. Competitors, he says, standing up, should start setting up. The crowds are going to be coming in soon. Tell Lynn and your boss to stop canoodling and get over here, will you? So that was the first excerpt I read. It's from fairly early in it is their first meeting. The next excerpt I will be reading is from after they've known each other for a little longer and have done the romance things, kissed, etc. And this is just the two of them again hanging out in an apartment as Kai tells a little bit about Chinese mythology. So, and there, okay, so this is Kai. You know the story of Nuza, don't you? I think there was a cartoon version we watched in Chinese school once, Eli says, putting the teapot on the kitchen table. It was a long time ago. Why? It's a pretty popular story, Kai says. He reaches down to pet May, who is assiduously chewing on the hem of his t-shirt. It's a folk story, Kai says. Nuza was a folk hero way, way back, born into a royal family. His mother initially gives birth to a giant ball of flesh, but Nuza comes out perfectly fine, apart from being able to walk from infancy. But that's folk heroes for you. Grows up a mostly normal kid, except for the flying and other supernatural powers. A few years go by, and there's a major drought. Crops are dying, the price of food is going up, people are starving. So they decide to hold a bunch of sacrifices to the Dragon King, Al Guang. This was back when there was less of a divide between humans and gods. And Al Guang, because he's been king for a long time and he's used to getting what he wants, demands that the people give him children to eat if they want it to rain. They try giving him rice, but it won't do. He wants soft child meat, and he's not the type to be satisfied when people don't give him what he wants. So instead of waiting for his subjects to change their minds, he gets one of his lackeys to kidnap some kids for dinner. They're Nuza's friends, though, and of course, when Nuza finds out, he's not happy. And being the supernatural semi-demigod child he is, he decides to fight the East Dragon King. Pretty understandable, Eli says. He reaches for Kai's hand, careful not to disturb Kai's other hand as it strokes May's smooth neck and takes it in his own. Kai's palms are dry and work-worn, but he has long, elegant fingers. Piano fingers, his mother would have called them. He sounds kind of unreasonable, this Dragon King. He was a king, Kai says, shifting away so that Eli has to stretch to reach him. It's what they do. If you've seen any of the Sun Wukong adaptations, there are a couple of Dragon Kings in those stories too, and they're just as good at raising cities as the old European fire breathers were, just more bureaucratic about their destruction. Anyway, Nuza goes out to fight the Dragon King's troops. It's a long fight. Nuza's this tiny kid flying around on his flaming wheels and thrashing the dragon generals with his magic sash. But at the end of it, he wins. No children get eaten, the people are freed from the tyranny of their old king, etc. And they all lived happily ever after? Basically, Kai says. There's a part later on when all the Dragon Kings get angry and Noza has to kill himself to stop a mass genocide, but then he comes back later, so it's fine. Eli isn't sure how to respond. That, he settles on, is a generous definition of fine. On Kai's lap, May stands, arching her back in a stretch as she pads over to curl up with her flank pressed against his leg. Kai absently runs a hand down her spine, and May closes her eyes, settling into the sheets. So what? Eli asks as he reaches over, gently scratching the area behind May's frill. She leans into the touch, rumbling against his fingers. You think we should start sacrificing children again if we want it to rain? Of course not, Kai says, rolling his eyes. He stands up and makes his way over to the lines of tanks, frowns as he leans down to adjust several knobs, fingers tapping over the salinity dials before shifting them up. It's just a story. You're not meant to take it seriously. Ah, the cultural ambassador thing, then. Exactly, Kai says, adjusting the settings on the last tank. Can't have you going back to America like we didn't teach you a thing about the local culture. Shoulder bumping against Eli's, Kai reclaims his spot on the bed, settling his head against the pillows. Eli hesitates, then moves closer so Kai's head is resting on his shoulder. Kai doesn't say anything, and Eli dares to put a hand on his head, gently brush Kai's bangs from his eyes. Anyway, Kai says, closing his eyes, it was just a story. It hadn't sounded like just a story, Eli thinks. Old, hard gods and the price of water and kingdoms that would sacrifice their children for the hope of another day. It's a familiar story, cousin to a litany of other stories across other mythologies. An archetypal legend, but no less true for its familiarity. So these are the two excerpts I am reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. That gives us a great little taste of the book. Since we're actually running low on time, I'm just going to get right into our question and answer period. So if anyone in the audience has any questions for Cynthia, please do share them in the chat, and we will get to those questions. So first of all, since the topic was raised in such a compelling way by Kari, I'd love to start our conversation with this idea of fantasy tropes. After the Dragons is a work that resists a lot of those tropes that we're familiar with, and some of those tropes being the individualistic hero or the chosen one, as we heard in Kari's song. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how Eli and Kai are resisting the chosen one narrative. Well, for one thing, you've got two protagonists instead of one, and I was wondering if you see them as representative of some kind of binary, or is there something more complex going on with them?
So I think there's a lot to go off of here. I think something I've said in interviews is like the focus on sort of ordinary people, and it's despite being like both very intelligent young men, they are not particularly the type of people that you would see as heroes. The other answer I kind of have was, as I was thinking about how this question, I tend to sometimes think of, I tend to think of things in terms of like X-Men metaphors. So like there's the central X-Men, I'm so sorry to anyone who knows me from college. There's the central metaphor, like in X-Men, like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King are sort of done through the characters of Charles Xavier, Professor X, and Magneto. And Magneto has sort of like a pushier, sort of like acerbic vibe, whereas like there is more attempting to get along with people from Professor X and maybe not throwing the Eiffel Tower at the military, even if they deserve it. So I think it's kind of like, for both of these characters, I think there's something they have to learn from each other. I think if there is someone who is perhaps more protagonist-like, it's probably Kai, but he's protagonist-like in a way that is perhaps detrimental in that like you should not be picking fights with everyone over everything. And I think Eli really helps to ground him, while like I think Kai's like readiness to be upset pushes Eli out of some of his more passive, I think, tendencies.
Yeah, Kai's struggle is perhaps more immediate. He has bigger challenges than Eli does, and so the reader might focus on him as more of a protagonist figure than Eli. We'll just talk about your dragons right away. Your dragons are different from what we usually get in fantasy novels, and the mythology that you describe in the book and the history, not just mythology, like there's an actual history of dragons in this book, bringing the dragons into a realistic setting. And I thought that was super interesting. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that and why you chose to depict dragons in that way.
Yeah, so in some of my research for this, I think I mentioned it very briefly, but there is the myth that the first emperor of China was able to maybe turn into a dragon. And the first emperor of China, who is not really a real person, but more of a mythical one, is seen as kind of the ancestor of like all Chinese people in a very limited sense, by which I mean like Han Chinese people. It's that mythology. And I think this is like perhaps really startling as a contrast to European mythology, where most of the dragons are sort of external forces that have to be battled, like dragons as something that is not necessarily connected to our world, but part of the wild that must be conquered. At the same time, the dragons in this story are in general not very large and impressive in that sense. And I think part of it is thinking about bringing realism to bear, and how despite our best efforts, a lot of species are endangered right now and they have limited habitats. So that's sort of fall from myth, or the fact that we are all kind of like living in the shadow of myth, and we can catch glimmers of it, but we can't quite reach it in the same way. I do think those glimmers are, I think they're like useful nonetheless. But I think like a story that is perhaps focused on more everyday experiences than maybe how we can reclaim the glorious past of China or reclaim American supremacy, etc.
Yeah, I think part of what you're saying is that the size of the dragons and their sort of unassuming nature helps them to blend into the realistic way that you've depicted Beijing. And I was wondering, when you were deciding where to set the story, was it always Beijing, or were you thinking about other settings, and how does that relate to other fantasy cities that you might have read about?
Yeah, so oddly enough, even though this is more sci-fi, I think of it in a way as slightly similar to urban fantasy, just in the sense that the world is very much sort of as you can see it, but there are people who are sort of like in the shadows that you can kind of like, you know, like extraordinary bits of magic. And I think that's what the dragons are a little bit here. And I really like that idea of being able to maybe see like our ordinary places, New York City, but with vampires or like sexy werewolves, etc. and to be able to see them with a sort of sense of wonder and of all of the other things that normally aren't seen. It makes us wonder, like, what beyond the obvious supernatural are we not seeing? Like, sometimes it is stuff that is not very pleasant to see, like homelessness and gentrification. Sometimes it is things that perhaps we haven't been looking to see, but which are like incredible discoveries when we find them, like that perfect tiny restaurant in an ethnic neighborhood, that shop that has been there for 50 years and is still family owned and incredible. Yeah, so like seeing the magical and the mundane.
Yeah, and the dragons appear often at very emotionally poignant parts of the story, but also they're hanging out in dumpsters and being rescued by Kai. So there's almost, I don't want to say a duality, but there's definitely different sides to how the dragons are presented in the story. Okay, we're coming up to 9 o'clock, so I just want to skip to some questions about Eli and Kai. So I'm wondering, how important is Eli and Kai's relationship in terms of the other themes in the book? When I was reading, I saw some connections between Kai's care for the dragons and Eli's care for Kai, and the way that the dragons become a way that they can communicate care for each other while still sort of maintaining some distance, right? Some sense of safety. So could you talk a little bit about that and other ways that their relationship is connected to the broader movements of the book?
So I think I've perhaps implied this a little bit earlier, but this book is very much centered around these two people meeting and the way they manage to change each other. So I see it as fairly central in that sense, and maybe like speaking to the transformative power of human interaction in general, or something like that. And I think there are a lot of like maybe issues that Kai is more acutely aware of that Eli is not, and that on the other hand, that like Eli has his own world and his own knowledge, and being able to meet Kai helps him process some of his own, like some of his own tangled connections to what is Beijing, what is my family, like what am I doing here? And I think for that goes the same, like Kai also has a similarly odd relationship with his remaining parent, in the sense that he does not want to be vulnerable around her. He doesn't want to like tell her he's sick, like, hi mom, I'm gay and I'm dying, which is very understandable, but leaving her in the dark is perhaps also a potentially not the kindest answer or most sustainable one either. So I think it's a meeting of sort of like worldviews and what care means, and what family relationships mean, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And they fit together so well, like their particular struggles and their particular personalities are really, not two sides of the same coin, but they do help each other. And even when they think that they're not helping each other, they are sometimes helping each other.
Yeah, they definitely give each other like very much needed perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to check in with the audience and see if there's any questions for Cynthia in the chat. If you do have any questions, we are going to wrap up soon, so make sure that you put them in the chat. I'm gonna skip to the question that I'm sure everybody has been wondering. There are many different kinds of dragons in your book. So if you could have a pet dragon, what kind of dragon would you have and why?
I'd probably have a Tianlong, which is it translates to sky dragon, but they fly, and I think that would be very like versatile and a pet. I'm just thinking pragmatically, I suppose, like with the water dragons, it's like you have to have all this equipment. I would also like a dragon that like listens to me, you know, like enough of a cat personality to be cuddly, but like not so much that they are, not so much that they wake you up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. Toby Johnson in the chat is wondering, what was your favorite aspect of the book to write?
I mean, from a world building perspective, I liked writing and doing the research about the dragons. I had a lot of help on some of the science bits from other friends who are better versed in that, but sort of like embedding the mythology into the structure of modern day Beijing.
Right, that's great. Okay, so we're going to move on to the prize giveaway section of the evening. I've got some books here that Cynthia has recommended, and we're going to send them to somebody. So the first one is this Elliot de Bedards, The Vanishers Palace. Cynthia, why did you recommend that one?
Oh, so Elliot de Bedards is Vietnamese. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling set in her Xuya verse. I don't think I pronounced that correctly because she's Vietnamese, but which is essentially futuristic sci-fi with Vietnamese elements. And the main characters are queer. One of them is also a shape-shifting dragon.
Cool. Okay, and I've also got this one, Mooncakes.
Yeah.
How did you pick this one?
Mooncakes is set vaguely in a Chinese bakery. It is about two teenagers, both of whom are somewhat supernatural. One of whom is like a witch, and her growing feelings for her friend while they try to solve murder mysteries, etc. in their like very particular place. And I really love the aesthetic of it, and I really love the commitment to like Chinese culture in terms of mooncakes, etc.
Okay, and we've also got this beautiful little illustration of May done by our cover artist. So if you love the cover of After the Dragons, this is a nice little thing to have, and it's really gorgeous. It's got this beautiful pearlescent sort of finish on it. It's lovely. So the first book I'm going to draw for is In the Vanishers Palace. And how we're going to do that this time is, Cynthia, you're going to pick a number between 1 and 56. Do you have a number?
Yes.
What is it?
17.
Okay, so I'm going to count down the list and give this to person number 8, who is not a relative. Okay, so Eleni Linus or Linus, you are the winner of Vanishers Palace and the illustration of May. So we'll give you some information how to claim that prize at the end of the launch. The second, the Mooncakes book, you have to pick another number, Cynthia.
Okay, so the number is 38.
Okay. This is going to require more counting. Michelle Zhang, if you are there, you can just say hello in the chat, and that is your prize, and we'll give you some information on how to claim that. Okay, great. All right, so we've got our 2 prize winners. Thank you so much, everybody. Congratulations to our prize winners. You can send an email to query@stelliform.press and we will make arrangements to get your prize to you. That email should go up in the chat momentarily, so just make sure that you grab it, or you can just go to the contact section of our website, which is stelliform.press. So it has been my absolute pleasure to host this launch for After the Dragons, and congratulations, Cynthia, on the publication of your first book. And what an incredible book it is. It's a book that really transports us to a world that is like our own, but amplified. It's a hotter place, a place where the myths of old are roaming the streets, even if they are somewhat diminished. But in Eli and Kai's microcosm, it's also a place of amplified care and vulnerability. And even if they struggle with their roles in caring for the world and for each other, this book acknowledges the increasing importance of these gestures. It's a complex and beautiful book, and if you don't already have a copy, you can grab the link in the chat and get a signed copy printed on recycled paper from the Stelliform website. And of course, this book is also available anywhere that you usually get books. So as we wrap up, I want to say thank you as well to Elinam, Agbo, Misha, Grifka, and Kari Maaren for helping us celebrate. And as always, thank you to Aaron Julian and Kristen Shaw for helping out tonight and for the other work that you've done for Stelliform. And finally, thank you to everyone who has joined us to help bring this book into the world. We will be continuing the launch celebrations over on Reddit's Our Fantasy tomorrow, starting around noon Eastern time. That's right, Cynthia?
Yes, okay, yes.
Yeah. All right, so noon Eastern time. So if you have any more questions for Cynthia, or if you just want to chat, we'd love to see you there. If you'd like to keep in touch with Stelliform and stay informed about what we've got coming down the pipes, be sure to sign up for Stelliform's newsletter and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our next title coming out next summer is Dennis Monbauer's House of Drought. It's a book set in a haunted colonial mansion in Sri Lanka and featuring a very angry, displaced forest spirit. It's a lot of fun. We'll be making a couple more book announcements really soon. I can't say any more about that at the moment, but some of them are things that people have been waiting for. So for any writers who might be here tonight, we are opening for submissions on September 1st. So be sure to tune in to social media for more information about the kinds of stories that we're looking for. So Cynthia, I'd like the final words of the evening to be yours. Do you have any last thoughts for those who are here this evening or those who are going to be watching this later?
Just a quick question. Should we do a draw for the art as well?
Oh, the art is going out with the books.
Oh,
yeah. So I've
okay.
got two copies, and the art is going to be going out with the books.
Just double checking. Yeah, thank you all for supporting this book. And it's been most of this book was edited during a pandemic, even if it was written before it. So it's been a really rough couple of year and a half or so. Just, I don't know, try to be kind to others when you can and kind to yourself as well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you everybody for coming, and hopefully we'll see you on the internet somewhere.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.